Picture this. A man wakes up on a Saturday morning, no alarm. The apartment is quiet, genuinely, completely quiet. He makes coffee the way he likes it. Too strong. No complaints. He sits by the window, opens a book, or maybe just stares out at the city for a while. Nothing is demanded of him. Nobody is disappointed in him. Nobody is performing emotions at him to see how he reacts. And he thinks to himself, this is actually nice. Not nice, the way people say it when they're settling. Nice, the way clean air feels after you've been inside a hospital for weeks. Nice, the way sleep feels after months of insomnia. And then, this is the important part, he doesn't feel lonely. He feels relieved. Now here's the question nobody wants to ask out loud. What happened to him? And more importantly, what happened to the idea of relationships that made solitude feel like the upgrade? Because we are living through something unprecedented. Quietly, without much fanfare, millions of men, educated, functional, emotionally capable men, have made a private decision. They have looked at modern dating, modern relationships, modern marriage, and they have said one word: no. Not with anger, not with bitterness necessarily. Just no. A quiet, deliberate, deeply considered no. And the world doesn't quite know what to do with that. Let me paint you another picture, because this one probably feels familiar. It's a Tuesday night. A man, let's call him Marcus, gets home from work around 7 p.m. He's 34. He's reasonably successful. He's not a model, but he's put together. He's been in 2 serious relationships in the last decade. Both ended badly, not because he cheated, not because he was absent, but because something invisible and impossible to pin down had corroded both relationships from the inside out. He opens his phone. There's a notification from Hinge. He installed it again 3 weeks ago after his friend told him he needed to get back out there. He stares at the notification for about 4 seconds. Then he puts his phone face down on the counter and reheats last night's pasta. He doesn't open the app. And he won't open it tomorrow either. He sits down, eats his food, watches something he actually wants to watch, and goes to bed at a reasonable hour. And somewhere in the middle of that perfectly ordinary evening, he makes a decision he doesn't even fully realize he's making. He decides, not tonight. And not tonight becomes not this week. And not this week becomes not this year. Marcus isn't broken. Marcus isn't misogynistic. Marcus isn't depressed. Or at least he's significantly less depressed than he was during his last relationship. Marcus has simply done a cost-benefit analysis that society told him he wasn't supposed to do. And the math didn't come out in dating's favor. There are millions of Marcuses, and nobody is really talking honestly about why. Here's what that Tuesday night reveals, and it's not what most cultural commentators want to admit. Men are not failing to date because they can't. They're choosing not to date because they have dated, and the experience taught them something uncomfortable, something that doesn't fit neatly into a think piece about emotionally unavailable men, or a TikTok about why men need to do better. What it taught them is this: the ROI on modern relationships, for many men, has become deeply, structurally negative. Now, before you click away, hear me out, because this is not a red pill manifesto. This is not about hating women. This is about something far more complex and far more interesting than gender war talking points. This is about a generation of men who grew up being told that love was the highest human experience, and then encountered a dating ecosystem so chaotic, so gamified, so emotionally expensive, that love started to look less like the highest human experience and more like a minefield dressed up as a garden party. And at some point, a smart person looks at a minefield dressed as a garden party and says, "I'm going to eat somewhere else." That's not fear. That's pattern recognition. But here's the uncomfortable layer underneath that. Some of it is fear. And the hardest part of this conversation is holding both truths at once. Some men have made a genuinely healthy, conscious, peace-based decision to opt out. And some men are opting out because they are so wounded, so conditioned to expect pain, that they've confused avoidance with wisdom. Both groups look identical from the outside. Both are alone on a Saturday morning enjoying their coffee. Only one of them is actually free. The cultural breakdown. Let's talk about the machine. Because none of this happened in a vacuum. We have built, accidentally, gradually, with excellent intentions, a dating culture that is psychologically brutal in ways we haven't fully reckoned with. Start with the apps. Dating apps were sold to us as efficiency. Why leave your romantic fate to chance when you can optimize? When you can filter? when you can A/B test your own personality and see which version of yourself gets more right swipes? Sounds great in theory. In practice, what we've created is a system that commodifies human connection so completely that people, men and women, both, start to interact with potential partners the way they interact with an Amazon shopping cart. Browse, compare, discard, wait for something better. The apps are deliberately engineered to feel like a game. Variable reward schedules, the same psychological mechanism behind slot machines, keep you swiping. Every match is a dopamine hit. Every ghosting is a micro rejection. Multiply that by hundreds of interactions and you don't get romance, you get emotional calluses. For men specifically, the math inside the apps is often discouraging. Study after study has shown that the distribution of matches on most heterosexual dating apps is extraordinarily unequal. A significant majority of men compete for a fraction of the attention distributed across platforms. This isn't about who deserves what. This is about what repeated low-reward experiences do to the human psyche over time. They teach you to give up. But the apps are only one part of it. Let's talk about the broader cultural story men have been handed about relationships. For the last 2 decades, the dominant cultural narrative has been, men are the problem. And look, there's truth in that narrative. There are real problems with how many men were raised, how they handle emotions, how they've historically treated women. That's real. That's worth examining. That conversation needed to happen. But somewhere along the way, the conversation stopped being about behavior and started being about being. It stopped being, here's how men can grow, and started being, here's why men, structurally as a category, are suspect. And men absorb that. Quietly, without saying much, because saying much would only confirm the suspicion. What do you do when you're told repeatedly by culture, by media, by dating profiles that say no fragile egos and don't be boring and know your worth, king? What do you do when the message is you need to be exceptional just to be considered? Some men rise to it, some men collapse under it, and a growing number of men simply step off the field. Not in protest, in self-preservation. And then there's social media. Oh, social media. Social media has done something fascinating and devastating to relationships simultaneously. It has made everyone aware at all times of the full spectrum of what they could theoretically have. Your partner is fine, but your phone is showing you the highlight reels of 1,000 other lives, 1,000 other connections, 1,000 other possibilities, all curated, all filtered, all designed to make ordinary life feel insufficient. This creates a permanent, low-grade dissatisfaction that is almost impossible to consciously detect. You don't know why your relationship feels slightly underwhelming. It's not that anything is wrong exactly, it's that your nervous system has been marinated in the illusion of infinite better options for so long that contentment feels like settling. And men who are paying attention, who've watched relationships implode over this dynamic, have started to draw a logical conclusion. If the system is designed to produce dissatisfaction, maybe the solution is to not participate in the system. Realization. 1. Peace is a drug, and once you taste it, chaos stops being romantic. There is a specific kind of peace that comes from living on your own terms. Not having to manage someone else's emotional weather. Not walking into your own home and immediately scanning for signs of mood. Not censoring yourself to avoid conflict, or performing enthusiasm you don't feel. Or having the same argument for the 17th time and pretending you believe it'll go differently this time. That peace, once tasted, becomes a reference point. And relationships, especially early relationships, involve a great deal of turbulence, uncertainty, the vertigo of vulnerability. And a man who has learned what peace feels like will now compare every relationship to that peace. And most early relationships won't win that comparison. This is the part that just get back out there crowd misses entirely. They think peace is the consolation prize. They think it's what you settle for when you can't find love. But for a lot of men, peace has become the baseline, and love has to earn its way into that baseline. Love has to prove it adds more than it costs. And right now, in the current cultural moment, a lot of men are looking at the numbers and deciding love hasn't made its case. Realization 2. Men have been emotionally educated by their worst experiences, not their best ones. Think about what most men carry into their 30s. A divorce they watched destroy their father, financially, emotionally, spiritually. A relationship in their 20s that ended with them feeling like they'd given everything and received confusion in return. A breakup that was followed not by closure but by a social media resurrection of their ex, visually thriving, while they sat in the wreckage wondering what they'd done wrong. These experiences don't just hurt, they teach. They write code into the nervous system. And the code they write is intimacy is dangerous. Vulnerability leads to loss. Love is a game where the rules change and you're always the last to find out. Now add to that a culture that rarely acknowledges male emotional pain as legitimate. A culture that says man up and you'll be fine, and then wonders why men struggle to process grief and attachment in healthy ways. Men are not opting out of relationships because they never wanted them. They are opting out because they wanted them deeply, were hurt by them profoundly, and found no infrastructure, no cultural permission to process that hurt before being told to go back in and try again. Realization. 3. The modern expectation matrix for men in relationships is quietly extraordinary. Let's be direct about this. The contemporary cultural expectation for a man in a relationship is be financially stable, increasingly, be the primary earner, be emotionally intelligent and communicative, be present and engaged, be exciting and spontaneous, maintain your physical health and appearance, have deep friendships and hobbies to demonstrate that you're not needy, be ambitious but not workaholic, be sensitive but not weak, be confident but not arrogant, and do all of this while being told that masculinity itself is under interrogation. While existing in a legal and social framework around divorce and custody that statistically disadvantages you, while navigating a dating market that, by most accounts, asks you to prove your worth upfront while emotional reciprocity is offered, if at all, on a delayed, uncertain schedule. This is not a complaint, these are just the conditions, and the reasonable response to impossible conditions is not to try harder. The reasonable response is to ask whether the game is worth playing. Realization 4. Some men are opting out from power, some are opting out from pain, and they don't always know which one they are. This is the most important realization, and it's the one that requires the most honesty. There are men who have done genuine inner work, who've processed their wounds, examined their patterns, arrived at a place of real self-knowledge, and they've looked at the current landscape of modern relationships and made a clear-eyed, grounded decision that solitude serves their growth better than pursuing connection right now. That is not avoidance. That is discernment. That is the kind of conscious opting out that deserves respect. And then there are men who are hiding. Men who've been so hurt, so conditioned to anticipate rejection, so trained by early experiences to believe they are fundamentally unlovable, that I choose to be alone has become the story they tell themselves instead of, I'm terrified of being hurt again. The scary thing is, both of those men are telling themselves the same story. Both of them feel equally convinced. Both of them wake up on Saturday morning and feel that same relief. The difference is what happens at 2 a.m. The difference is what shows up when the stillness gets too loud. Now let's go deeper. Because we've been circling something that nobody wants to say plainly. We are watching a generation of men quietly conclude that the traditional architecture of adult male life, find a partner, build a family, anchor your identity to a relationship, no longer makes structural sense. And this isn't just about personal preference, this is about something tectonic. For most of human history, the social contract around relationships went roughly like this. Men provided resources, stability, protection. Women provided domestic labor, emotional management, children. It was inequitable. It was limiting for everyone, but it was coherent. Both parties knew what they were signing up for. There was a cost-benefit calculation that, however flawed, balanced. That contract has been renegotiated, as it should have been. Women have entered the workforce, achieved financial independence, redefined their relationship to family and domesticity. This is genuinely good. This represents human progress. But here's the part we haven't figured out yet. The new contract hasn't been written. We tore up the old one rightfully, and we have been improvising ever since. And in the vacuum left by the old contract, something odd has happened. The expectations on men, provide, protect, lead, emotionally support, grow, perform, commit, have largely remained. But the reciprocal benefits that used to accompany those expectations have been renegotiated, redistributed, made conditional in ways that are entirely unpredictable. The result is a generation of men who feel like they're being asked to sign a contract with blank pages where the terms used to be. And some of them are just putting the pen down. Consider the data, because the data is startling. Male loneliness is at epidemic levels. Men report having significantly fewer close friendships than they did 2 decades ago. Male mental health statistics are quietly catastrophic. The number of men who describe themselves as chronically single has risen substantially. And buried inside all of these statistics is a population of men who are not suffering visibly, who are not acting out, who are just absent, withdrawn from the romantic marketplace, not with fury, but with something quieter, something more final. Absence. And nobody's quite sure whether that absence is wisdom or wound. Here's what I believe, having looked at this honestly. It is both, in proportions that vary by individual and that shift across time. A man at 32 who decides to focus on his career and his healing for a year, that might be genuine wisdom. That same man at 47 who has never allowed anyone fully in, who has perfected the art of controlled distance, who confuses emotional self-sufficiency with emotional health, that's a different story. That's a wound wearing a philosophy's clothing. The piece became the prison, and the man inside stopped noticing the walls because he decorated them so beautifully. This is the deepest danger, not that men will stay single. Staying single can be a perfectly valid life. The danger is that avoidance calcifies into identity. That I choose peace becomes the story a man tells himself for 20 years, while actual peace, the kind that comes from genuine connection and vulnerability, remains something he's never experienced. Because here's the thing about real peace. It's not the absence of turbulence. It's the capacity to remain grounded within turbulence. And a man who has never developed that capacity, who has confused the absence of relationships with the presence of peace, has not found peace. He has found numbness. And numbness is very quiet. And quiet is very easy to mistake for peace, especially if you've been in enough noise. Let me give you one more scenario, because this one hits differently. There's a man, let's call him Daniel, 41 years old. He opted out at 32. He had a painful divorce, rebuilt himself, built a successful business, has a beautiful apartment, travels when he wants, sleeps when he wants, answers to nobody. By every external measure, he's thriving. And 3 times a year, on his birthday, on New Year's, and for reasons he can't explain, on random Tuesday nights in March, something moves through him that he has no language for. Not loneliness exactly, more like the awareness that his life, however well constructed, is a monologue, that nothing he does is being witnessed by anyone who truly, wholly knows him. He doesn't act on it. He pours a drink, watches something, goes to bed. By morning, it's gone. He will tell you, if you ask him directly, that he is happy. And he's not lying. He is happy. He's also missing something he has no words for. And the fact that he has no words for it is perhaps the most profound cost of opting out. Not the absence of love, but the gradual erosion of even the vocabulary for what's missing. The deeper truth. So where does this leave us? Here's my honest assessment, and I want you to sit with this rather than react to it. Most men who are opting out of relationships are not wrong about what they're opting out of. The current dating landscape is exhausting. The social and legal structures around relationships and marriage involve real risk. The cultural narrative around men is genuinely confusing and often contradictory. Their pattern recognition is not faulty. But, and this is a significant but, the solution to a broken system is not always to leave the system. Sometimes it is. Sometimes exit is wisdom. But sometimes the solution is to become someone who can navigate a broken system without being broken by it. To develop the internal resources, the emotional maturity, the self-knowledge, the genuine security. To engage with intimacy without losing yourself in it. To be in a relationship not because you need it, not because culture told you to, but because you've chosen it, freely, from a place of wholeness rather than hunger. That kind of love chosen consciously by a man who is fully himself, is extraordinarily rare and extraordinarily worth building toward. The question isn't, should I date or should I not date? The question is, who am I becoming while I'm figuring that out? Are you becoming more open, more self-aware, more capable of genuine intimacy when the right situation presents itself? Or are you becoming more defended, more efficient at keeping people at a careful, comfortable distance, more fluent in the language of independence as a means of never having to be known? Because both paths look the same for a long time. Both involve solitude. Both involve self-development. Both involve a certain kind of peace. But they lead to very different places at the end. There's an old idea in philosophy that there are 2 kinds of freedom. Freedom from pain, from obligation, from the chaos of other people's needs. This is the freedom of the closed door, the freedom of the quiet apartment, the freedom of the man who wakes up on Saturday and answers to no one, and freedom for growth, for connection, for the terrifying, irreplaceable experience of being truly known by another human being. This is the freedom of the open hand, the freedom that requires courage, because it cannot be achieved from safety. Most men who are opting out have found the first freedom. And I want to be clear that freedom is real. It is not nothing. In a world that was trying to consume them, they found a way to breathe. That deserves respect. But the second freedom, freedom 4, you cannot find it alone. You cannot meditate your way to it. You cannot optimize your way to it. You cannot build a good enough life to make the absence of it irrelevant. You can only find it by stepping back into the arena. With clearer eyes, with stronger foundations, with a better understanding of who you are and what you actually want. Not because society demands it. Not because your biological clock is ticking. Not because being alone makes you less of a man, but because somewhere inside you, underneath the relief, underneath the philosophy, underneath the carefully constructed contentment, there is a version of you that wants to be known, that wants to know someone, that understands at a frequency just below language that the most profound human experiences are not solo performances, that the most exquisite music is not played to an empty room. The men who found real peace, not the absence of pain, but genuine peace. They haven't opted out of love. They've opted out of chaos while staying open to something realer. They've stopped chasing what culture told them to want and started asking what they actually, genuinely, at their core, desire. And sometimes the answer is not now. And sometimes the answer is not this. And sometimes the answer is yes, this, her, this risk. This terrifying, beautiful, infinitely complicated risk. The question you have to answer, the question only you can answer, is whether your peace is a foundation or a fortress, whether you're resting or hiding, whether the quiet of your Saturday morning is the silence of someone who has arrived or someone who has simply stopped walking. Think about that. And if this hits somewhere real, drop a comment. Tell me which one you are, because I promise you're not as alone in this as you think. Peace or fear. The line between them is thinner than most men want to admit.